Okay, I call the Board of Education special meeting to order. I seek an approval of the agenda
So moved.
by Jake. Second by Christy. All those in favor? And Christy? Aye. Okay. And then just so everybody knows, Christy Evans is also here. She is just called in by phone. So, and then we also have Jared and Ben and Jake are in the boardroom. Casey may be joining us, and Nathan is not here or doesn't believe he will be able to join us, but will if he needs to. So I'm going to turn the floor over to Don. He's going to fill you in on a couple of things, and we will move forward.
Okay. Well, today I had found out that a video had been posted to the Circle media page that we had worked on 6-7 weeks ago, sometimes in January, I believe, and then it kind of came through there. At that particular time, when it was shared with me at the beginning of February, I shared with our district admin staff. We did just as a social distancing promo video. And at the time, you know, my ultimate goal with that video was to continue our great momentum of keeping our kids in school. And you know, that was truly my ultimate purpose of that was to, you know, hey, we want to have graduation, we want to have these activities, we want to do these things, continue social distancing, and, you know, gave some kudos to our staff for the hard work that they've done, and also our students and parents and everyone, and just that tried to tie it in as a just a video on social distancing. Never was the intent to harm anyone or offend anyone by that, certainly, and I certainly apologize if that does. My intent, however, was for us to stay in school and continue to keep our mitigation strategies in place and to continue moving. So I wanted to get that out there that the video was done 7 weeks, 7 weeks ago, and unfortunately posted today, just today on our media site. It wasn't posted anywhere else, and it wasn't a meaningful thing that we posted. We didn't post on our Twitter account when it was done. We didn't post on our Facebook page. It was just there that we shared with our admin to share with staff or however they chose to use that. So it was not my intent, and that video was not recorded recently. So I apologize for that. As I mentioned, the intent was not there to create any controversy, which I apologize for if it did or offended anyone. So my apologies.
Does anybody have any questions on the video? Again, it was just about social distancing, and at the time, just kind of reinforcing our mitigations that we were doing back in January and February when everybody was just tired of the mitigation factors, and we were just trying to, at that point, support everybody. Any questions or feedback on the video?
So the one question I have is, it sounds to me like from what I've heard from somebody outside, that these kids weren't aware of what they were doing. Do we do this quite a bit on these videos?
Well,
let them in on what this video is taking. We just give them a piece of it, give them the words, they put it in, and the videographer puts everything together in their own words.
I was not involved in the production or the camera part of that. I would have to do some checking with the people that did that, but and I'll have to check those procedures too. So I can't specifically state to that. I know that there had been some questions on, you know, that my student didn't know they were in there, and certainly I honestly, I didn't think about it. We do a lot of videos throughout the year with whatever it is, and it just wasn't my thought process at that time. And really, to be honest, after I did the shot, you just kind of forget about it and you move on. So I didn't really even think about it. And once again, certainly, we didn't mean to do that to anyone. It wasn't unintentional. From that aspect, certainly a mistake, and certainly we can admit to that, or I can admit to that, or whatever, and certainly we apologize for that. And never did we think that that ever would be an issue. We were trying to stay in school and keep our kids in school, and I'm sorry it has came to that.
So this, moving forward, are we going to reach out to the parents before we put them on pretty controversial things like this?
Certainly, we will have to change some practices. There's no doubt about that.
I don't believe it needs to be a student on something this controversial, because this is, as you know, has upset a lot of people in our district.
Well, I definitely understand that and respect that. The idea behind social distancing or that message to social distance, I wasn't meaning to upset anyone. And furthermore, if I thought it was going to upset someone, certainly we wouldn't have done it. I just kind of thought that that's what we, social distancing, even in our classrooms, as far as quarantines and all those kind of things, and athletics and all of that stuff, that's what we've been instructed to try to continue to do. And so I wasn't trying to upset anyone, trust me. That is not my goal in that regard. So my apologies. I take full responsibility, but just knowing that I wasn't trying to do anything negative to impact anyone, any kid, or any in our district. Nobody.
And at the time, we were talking about how do we cut quarantines and how do we minimize that. We talked about that at the board meeting. And so I think that was, kind of the driving force is trying to make sure that we social distance to cut down on those quarantines so we don't have students missing school. And again, it's a timing thing. At the time, that was important.
Well, it's still important now. At that point, we were just trying to reinforce
Right.
we were halfway through the school year and we just kind of wanted a fresh start. And I would say, 98, 99% of the time, any video that's produced is probably not a controversial video. And Jake, I think you bring up a good point that if a student or a teacher is videotaping for whatever reason, the people in the video they do have a right to understand, what is it all about? Whether it's about a video on electives, like, hey, we're videotaping your class because we're going to do a video on electives. And it's not a hard thing to do, and it is something that definitely needs to be looked at because, the students should understand, going to parents every time somebody is to be videotaped. I'm not certain that logistically that's possible. But it is definitely something that we can push back to the admin and have them understand that there are some steps that have to be taken. Because we can't just take videotaping for granted. We can't just assume everybody wants to be on a video.
And like I said, I just don't want the words being altered. And I know some of the parents have felt that way. And that's why I brought this to your attention.
The words being altered, what do you mean?
Meaning they throw out the words they want them to say and then not knowing where it's going into.
Oh,
Like Janet has spoke.
okay.
So I think it's important on any video that's taken. Because again, you can have somebody say a piece, and you can take a piece out of context and create a video that might be controversial.
Right.
So I think it is appropriate that that they do know why the video is being taken. I think that could be an expectation. So,
once again, my apologies. Didn't mean to hurt anybody or anything like that. That'd be the last of my want to do's for sure. I mean, mistakes happen, and certainly we will do things to correct those in the future without a doubt. And
And I understand students not wanting to be misrepresented. And if they were, I hate that they were. And again, we just need to make sure they're not going forward. So.
Great.
Any other questions or discussions in relations to this topic? The other thing under navigating change that Dawn and I have discussed, and Jake originally approached Mr. Potter about this, was getting a survey sent out to our parents and teachers about what we want to do moving forward with the last portion of the school year in relationship to students and teachers or anybody in the schools wearing masks. So Mr. Potter has done some research, has gotten some questionnaires from other schools. And so he's going to read through kind of the approach we're thinking about taking with sending a survey out that will go out next week, where we would have the results back by our April school board meeting. So Mr. Potter, can you kind of walk us through
absolutely.
the statement that will go out with the survey, as well as the questions? And if we need to, we can put this up on the screen as well, but we'll have him read through it first, and then if he needs to, we can put it up on the screen.
In an effort to, I kind of visualize this, and we can do it a lot of different ways, but I visualize this going out into an email, obviously, to our parents, and as a description of what's going on and what you're doing. I put together a paragraph that I just wanted to make sure that our board is comfortable with. And it basically reads as, we would like to hear your thoughts from staff and parents on masks for the remainder of the 2021 school year. We recognize there are varying levels of comfort when it comes to COVID-19 safety precautions and want to ensure there's an opportunity to provide feedback. This will be collected through this survey and will be provided to the Board of Education for consideration. And then there's a link there that they can click, and we can have a close date. We can have a close time. And if at any time the Board of Education votes to make changes to those requirements or to our masking requirements, we will communicate that appropriately and quickly. Also included in there would be the current guidelines we are operating under, the KDHE and local guidelines that kind of show how we're matched up with that, and so on and so forth. And then that would be that part of it. And then the survey, and we can get back to that, but the survey basically we'd send it out by building level, and it would say simple as, I would like to see for the remainder of the 2021 school year, continue wearing masks or discontinue wearing masks. It's basically a yes or no answer. And then that same question would go to the middle school level, to the high school level, to all of the elementaries. I tried to make it as simple and as quick as possible to get that information. And anytime we do a survey here, our IT people they're the ones who have access to that file. I do not have access to that file. They gather it up, they send us the results after it's compiled. So we can also, if you choose to, for the effort of streamlining this process, we can get an outside third party to put together this, or not put it together, but to administer it. It's entirely up to the board. But are there any questions or any concerns with the paragraph that says, hey, here's what we're doing, here's the survey, here's the guidelines that we currently are operating under, and then have the survey. Now the survey would also, in the instructions for the survey, is, hey, if you are, you can only vote once, of course, and if you have 2 kids, in there, from each one, it's one vote. I mean, it's just one parent. So, that's kind of how we do that. But if you have a kid at the elementary level and the middle school level and the high school level, you should receive 3 different surveys. And you would put that in each one of those.
Do you get 3 votes in that case?
3 votes, but it would be based on, individualized
Different
buildings. Primarily because you would like to see what each level would like to see for their masking.
So the response, is there, I assume this is an electronic survey or is it a paper survey?
Electronic survey.
Okay, so the electronic survey, the response to the survey will link it to that grade level.
Yes, to go into the data set, yes. Yeah.
Before we move forward too much with, if, do we need to change anything? Is everybody okay with the survey going out? Is there anybody that would prefer not to have a survey going out?
Yeah, I have a question though, Dawn, when you're listing the current guidelines, these are suggestions, right, from the health department?
That is correct. These are recommendations. There is nothing that would, as a school district, require us to do anything. It even,
Well, I want to back up a second on that. So like, let's say for whatever, let's say we voted to not have masks. Again, that's a guideline. What's not a guideline though, is what would happen with quarantines in that classroom.
right, and
Like-
that's where I was gonna
Okay,
get
so
to.
if, so Dawn, can you explain, like, let's say we voted to not have masks, what would be the quarantine situation then?
Then we would follow the guidelines at that point?
We would have to follow the quarantine guidelines, or not guidelines, the quarantine
Rules.
rules.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I may have misspoke there a little bit, like, we have the authority to, from my understanding on that, is we can vote mask or no mask. The quarantining piece, due to the local health departments and et cetera, we would have to follow those. Those are actual guidelines, those are not recommendations. So
Okay.
that's the way I understand it.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Is there a way that we could say, masks can be optional? It's not yes or no, but those that prefer to keep a mask on can, those that don't have to?
Sure, and we kind of discussed that. The question was, is there a way that we could put a question in there that masks are optional? And I kind of dealt with that a little bit, or thought about that a little bit, and I thought, well, even the discontinuing wearing masks does not mean that we aren't going to allow them to wear them. So they would still be able to do that. I can definitely put that in there. I just kind of really wanted to where we don't split the votes. It's either a yes or no, to where we have that more of a clear-cut decision. Does that make sense?
So just so everybody's clear, so right now I'm quarantined with a mask. It's 6 foot. If you're within that 6 feet, you're getting quarantined with a mask, correct?
No.
Okay, how does that read right now?
We changed that, a couple board meetings ago from the low risk and high risk settings.
Okay.
And if you're wearing a mask and you're in a classroom setting and you're not going to be quarantined in a classroom setting wearing masks properly. And that's, we're supposed to maintain at least 3 foot of distance and that kind of stuff. That has shortened a little bit this week. In a high risk situation, which currently would be areas where we're not wearing a mask, where exertion is taking place, like a PE class or an athletic event, singing, eating lunch, those are required to be at least 6 foot apart. And potentially then you're quarantined if you're not wearing the mask.
Okay.
And so that becomes it. And in a classroom situation, if you're not wearing the mask, then quarantines would be in effect.
Okay. And how many quarantines do we have going on right now?
We have 4, I believe, currently.
Okay. How many active?
Those are all based on home situations.
Okay, so none school related.
No,
Okay.
not currently.
How many active cases do we have in our district?
Why?
And what school's that?
What level?
It's an elementary,
Elementary level, okay. Yeah. And is that school related or home related?
home related.
Okay.
However, you know, if that student were to be in class, then that could potentially lead to quarantines if we weren't in this low risk or high risk situation.
So if somebody has had the vaccine, they don't have to quarantine.
2
correct?
weeks following their second vaccine, they are exempt from quarantine
So
unless they show symptoms.
our teachers, I'm sorry, I'm just asking a question
No,
to
you're
get to this so we all understand.
Sure.
So of our teachers, right now, they have been over that 2-week threshold, correct?
Some
Most
have,
of them, not all,
Some got vaccinated yesterday.
you know.
What was the holdup there? I mean, if you don't mind me asking, what,
Some it took longer to get in, that, you know, there was a sign up for certain amounts, and by the time you get through the first dose, and then you get to the second dose, just some were lagging behind.
okay,
Yeah,
Not
I think it
everyone
was-
could get in that first time.
I think some of it was preference too, waiting
Yeah.
to see, you know, is
How did everybody else handle it?
yeah, how's it gonna go, you know, and I think then maybe some decided that that's what it is, and some haven't, you know, and that's to each of their own on that.
And I know there were some that, you know, they signed up first and their co-teacher waited because they didn't want to both risk the chance to be gone, you know, to help cover. So there were some of those decisions too.
so by the time we make this decision, are we at 75% of our teachers vaccinated within that 2-week lead time?
I don't know, I don't know,
Can we get that data in front of the board as well? So
I will work to get that data. It's so ebb and flow a little bit, and it's a little bit,
Part of it's HEPA.
yeah.
Right, it's kind of data, so we're only as good as they are willing to share potentially.
Like we literally can't send out a survey that says, have you been vaccinated or not? Because of HEPA guidelines. So, I mean, I guess, you could
But
try to send it out and then just not answer it.
Right.
So,
We can work to get some data on that, Jerry.
I mean, I would be curious to see that data, just, so the full board is aware of how many teachers, you know, understand the HIPAA law, but I think in this time of uncertainty in their eyes and, you know, children's eyes, parents' eyes, that's something the board, I think, needs to take into consideration and look at.
And I would advocate that we do that for all staff, not just teachers, because, you know, it's hard to run the building if your front office is not there or if the kitchen is not there. And, you know, we've seen that throughout the year at times. So I would advocate that all staff is included in that.
We will work to get a percentage and a number,
Okay.
both.
And we are having the, administrators, teachers, everybody vote on this as well. Is that correct?
yeah, they'll get a separate survey,
Separate survey.
right?
Teachers and staff would get a survey, parents would get a get a survey as well.
And administrators would give.
So all of our staff would have an opportunity. Bus drivers, custodians, you know, all of them. I think,
What's the impact on athletic participation or extracurricular participation with or without masks? Risk of quarantine, those kind of things.
well, it would be considered a high-risk situation depending on the close contact piece. If you don't have a mask on, then you have the opportunity, or not the opportunity, the possibility of being considered a close contact and having to quarantine.
I mean, we kind of have that situation right now with our sports. So like, again,
Well,
if, like,
let me take it to a different level. If they're out participating, they're in a high-risk situation.
right,
But if we turn the classroom into a high-risk situation, what's the increased probability of them having quarantine and miss their state tournament or whatever?
Yeah, I think it would increase. I don't know what that percentage would be, but,
there would be a greater chance. How
We
about that?
definitely saw several in the first semester, multiple times, the same students would be quarantined because of being in a high-risk classroom situation and not being able to participate extracurricular.
And that was prior to the modified quarantine rules coming into place, because
Correct.
if you were within that 6 feet during that particular time, mask or no mask, where the modified quarantine now is within the classroom, masked up, you're not considered a close contact because they haven't seen that. And that's why we instituted those rules.
And quarantine has gone down to 10 days now rather than 14, as long as you're asymptomatic.
So can we also, because I looked at the most recent Butler County cases, and I mean, we are very low right now, very low, which is great. Can we
Yeah,
also get those together for us to see, so we can weigh all options? I mean, because
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I think the more data you can put in front of us as a board to make a good, adequate decision
Yeah,
for our
And we'll need,
patrons and our students and teachers,
And
I think will be the best.
And as a gating committee and stuff, and for data for the gating committee, I update those weekly.
Okay.
And so I have it from the very beginning of the year all the way through the school year. And so I can give you that data. Now, I would say Butler County right now is starting to tick up just a little bit on percentage. It's still very low, but it was lower last week. It's shown a little bit of an uptick this week over what I reported on Monday at noon last week. And that's important to say, it was recorded Monday at noon, because we see those numbers fluctuate all the time.
yeah,
I've got a daily one. And
Yeah.
right now, Butler County has 16 active cases.
Yeah.
There is none in our district. There is 2 in our district, but they're in El Dorado, and we don't know where that's at. And as far as Sedgwick County, I don't have that because the way the county works over there.
yeah, and that's tough too.
Countywide was only in the 2% for Sedgwick County. I think it was 4.5 or so when I looked earlier today, and I was just looking to look.
Well,
I just would like to see as much data in our hands as a board to make a good decision for our district.
I'll share that for the year.
yeah, absolutely. I don't know, I could be telling a fib here, but I think I read somewhere where state numbers right now as a whole are better than they have been since June, which, I mean, that's awesome. I mean, that's great.
And it has to do a lot with the vaccine. I mean, we've got to credit that. We've waited on that.
Right.
I mean, that's showing a lot of,
Yeah, I think there's a mixture of people who've had it, plus their vaccine, plus, some other things. So we can definitely get that data. Now, Sedgwick County, that's kind of hard, and that's what we've really judged it all along. If Sedgwick County was high, we just kind of went back to our district to say, what does our district really look like? Because we do have Sedgwick County kids, but we certainly weren't going to take the entire Sedgwick County numbers and own them as ours, so it's a little bit difficult. So we're probably, we can look at both the Sedgwick numbers and the Butler numbers, but as I said before, Sedgwick might be a little bit hard to judge.
I know there's been in the news, Sedgwick County dropping out of the mask mandate, but the governor's order still applies until March 31st. So I don't know if there's any updates along those lines, how that might impact, or if they, if she comes along and tries to run something else through, next week, who knows?
Yeah, and in front of that, there is a new law that basically says, hey, the board has the authority to look at those things.
Okay, so, is everybody good with the survey going out the way it was presented, or do you want the question read again so you understand what it says, or are you good?
I think my concern was that parents with kids at multiple age levels are able to, the vote per age level would be reflected.
Correct.
And that was my main concern there. Because, they may not want to risk, if they got an athlete or whatever, to put additional risk on their senior year participation and, or whatever, versus, you know, what the likelihood is something at a lower grade level may impact on quarantine.
So basically what you're saying is like a parent vote on K through 6 could be no masks, and then a 9-12 could be same parent, same masks.
Right.
Okay.
That's my concern, make sure that they have the opportunity to
And
express
they would
that
be able to
position.
do that, and I appreciate that, because that's why going through buildings can be appropriate.
But if they want to send their kid a mask to keep them safe,
That's
Right,
fine.
they
I
still
mean,
can.
we're
not-
fine with that.
Yeah, we're not gonna tell them that, hey, you have to take your mask off.
Yes.
I mean, and that's what I want to be clear here. I mean, I think it needs to state that if they want to keep participating in whatever, wearing a mask, being remote, we're still going to offer all those options. Now that,
Right.
you know, if this comes back and we've got a 90% uptick of people that do not want the mask, I think that's something we really need to look at.
But also to clarify, when you have students, some of them in a mask and some that are not, those students that are in a mask, the mask all along will say, you know, it helps protect that student, but it protects the other students in the room. And so if you have unmasked students, that would still be considered a high-risk situation in a classroom setting. And so if you have half and half, that classroom now becomes a high-risk setting.
Understood. I'm curious to see where we're at with the data. If we
Sure.
send the surveys out, we can make those kind of decisions
Yeah.
at that time.
Yep.
Right now, we're all speculating. and
Right.
I don't want to speculate anything.
Well, and you guys know as a board, I mean, whatever is decided, we're gonna champion that effort. We're gonna do that, whether it's masks, no masks, or partial masks. We wanna champion that. From our perspective, or, you know, like I always mentioned before, from the policies and the recommendations from those that govern schools, the KDHE and some of those, that's where my advice comes from. And so certainly I want you guys to know that whatever you guys choose to do, we're gonna go 100% on it. We're not gonna question it, we're gonna do it, we're gonna operate it, and that's how we're gonna work it. And so, just like we have with masks, and just like we had with the
Mitigation strategy.
mitigations and the quarantine guidelines and that kind of stuff. So I wanna make that really clear that I'm not a, you know.
You're not creating these guidelines out of air.
Correct. I mean, and certainly, I want to make sure that partially, my job is to follow policy, and the board puts that policy in place, and we
will do it.
we will do it. That's right. That's right. So I'm perfectly fine either way. Well, I mean, it's up to you guys and I don't mean to put that on the board. I'm not saying that, but the board is the only one that has the authority together to do it.
Casey or Jared, do either of you have any input or questions? I'm thinking it's a no.
Nothing for me.
Okay, thank you.
I'm good.
Okay, thank you. Based off of what we've discussed, we will move forward with the survey going out next week.
Yeah.
Have we narrowed down dates yet?
I just throwing some things out here. April 1st, if we were to send this out, collect data until April 8th, we would get it to the board by April 9th, which is a week from, let's see,
Today, 2 weeks from today.
2 weeks from today, we would have that data to the board. The next question, and then you would have it for the April 12th meeting. We could have all of this other data compiled too. We would put it in there. We would include all the guidelines. We would include everything for you to have as much information that you want or that you would need. And if there's other information that you think of, ooh, I'd like to have that, please let us know. We would certainly put that in there. The next question that I would ask is, we never really, are we okay with us doing that, or do we want an outside person to perform that?
So my thinking on that, I know there was some voice out in our community that puts you or the administration in a bad position. Me personally, I'm for maybe getting an outside person to do it, so it takes some of the stress off of the board, off of the administration, and it's on somebody else where they're not taking you like anybody is fudging numbers or things like that. Because I know right now, our community is a little on edge, and I don't want to make that any worse. So by keeping these guys in a safer spot for them and us, I think it would be best to probably go out. I don't know what that costs. I'm hoping they can turn it around in that timeline. That'd be something to check in on, but I think it would keep your nose clean and everybody else's as well. So.
Well, I've never doubted the integrity of either Michael or Don, and I will do whatever other board members want to do. I understand what you're saying, Jake, that, by eliminating them from the factor, that then they can say, this is what was presented to us, but they never touch the data anyway. It goes through IT. So if anybody's going to manipulate the data, it would be somebody in our IT department. And I have never doubted the integrity of our administration.
I'm not saying that I'm doubting.
I know.
I want to make that perfectly clear. I'm not doubting any integrity here. All I'm saying is get it completely out of our district. That way our whole district is washed clean of it and there's no speculation of anything. But there's nothing lost here. I want you guys to be perfectly clear on this end of it.
If he's gonna go outside, who would he have to do it, and what would the cost be?
That's a good question. I have, KASB, Kansas Association of School Boards, could put a survey out for us. I would, just on a guesstimate, I don't know how they charge, but I would say anywhere from $300 to $500 to conduct a survey.
And we would maybe need to have like a shorter window, which is fine. Like if we send it out on the first, it would maybe need to come back sooner in the week so that they would have the time to compile it and then get the information.
I would certainly have to visit with them to see if they could even perform it on our timeline and our dates. But I would assume that they would be able to. And like I said, as always, I will do what the board directs us to do, and I don't have a problem with it either way.
Now, I would love for some discussion. I mean, I'm just thinking out to protect, these guys. Because I know last time there was a little animosity from some, and Don had voiced his concerns to me about that. So that's why I'm bringing this up.
Right.
Well, I'm not opposed to keeping it in-house by no means.
Yeah.
I'm just throwing that option out there for everybody for a discussion.
And I also want to be clear that we are going to have some piece of that to give the addresses and everything to that third party, so we will have a little bit of a piece of that and work in that in order to connect them with our patrons.
Sorry. Thanks. I just didn't want to lose everybody. Our screen was about to go away.
And so, like, I don't know what you said there, I was gonna deal with.
Well, I was just saying that, we are gonna have a part to connect our patrons with that third party, and so we can't be completely out of it, unfortunately, because of the data that we have. And
Right, that's that's a good point. They would have to send us the link, and then we would have to forward that out there. Because otherwise, we're not given, it would
I want
be
to give
legal
our
for
patrons
us to
data to
give.
everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, we would have, so that's a good point. We'd have to send the link out from us, but it would actually be from them.
So the perception to people might be that we did it anyway, even though the data would go directly back to the third party, but we wouldn't touch it. The perception is going to be most likely that it was us doing this because we sent the link.
So the survey, is like a Survey Monkey, is it
It'd be a Google survey,
Okay.
I'm trying to think, a Google survey, stuff that we use all the time. Google form, there you go.
Okay, so if we did that, the survey's controlled, the data, if two people have inquiry access to the data, and whatever, more than one person has inquiry access to the data, so there can be some checks and balances. Then, to me, we ought to just go ahead and do it internally. If something comes up and we find out because we got checks and balances and somebody's manipulating data, we got a personnel issue.
Exactly.
That's gonna be dealt with and a separate deal. So, but like I said, I don't think, I would say, I don't think we got any integrity issues, so I'm not at all opposed to doing it internally.
Yeah, and like I said, the IT people accumulate that and then they send it. Like at the beginning of the year, we did the same thing. I mean, the IT people put the graphs together and that kind of stuff and gave us the information. And that's why I wanted to talk about questions too, because the person creating the survey, their intent is to get the information, but it may not, when I read the survey from the second person that gets it, may be like, what is this even asking? And so unintentional consequences of a survey question. And that's why surveys sometimes are very difficult to get the information you're looking for. That's why I've really researched hard trying to figure out how can we make this survey as valid and reliable as possible. And so that's why I bring that up too.
Well, it's always important to have multiple eyes on survey questions, on videos, whatever, before it's actually published. To, get multiple people's views of it, because, I mean, that's the benefit, like I said this before, benefit of a board. You got 7 people on a board and they've got 7 backgrounds, 7 different, right, all kinds of different experiences that says, okay, here's, and hopefully you're kind of eliminating or minimizing those unintended consequences by, using a team type, process before something goes out. So.
Absolutely.
Okay, so is everybody okay with just moving forward internally with the survey? Anybody, I guess I should say, does anybody strongly oppose or oppose us just doing the survey internally? Okay.
I'm good with it.
Okay. So we will have the survey go out on April 1st. It will need to be returned by April 8th. We will receive the information from the survey sometime on the 9th. It may be later afternoon, just depending on how quickly the information can be sent.
And I will probably, just for clarity, we'll probably have the survey results. We'll probably close them around noon to give our IT people some time to gather all of that building data and accumulate it, to put it in a readable form for the board, because we want to send that out to you the next day. So in sake of their time, I would like to have that due at noon that day.
Is this, I guess one other question along those lines, you're doing it by building, so you'll have results for Denton grade school, Tawanda grade school, Oil Hill, Greenwich, or are you gonna do all the results together on the?
Our initial plan would be to combine all of the elementaries together. We would have that data, and we can give that to you, but our idea was to put all of the elementary together, all of the middle school, all of the high school together, and have the 3 different graphs and what they've chosen based on that.
I think that's probably the best way to do it, in my opinion. You don't want to get to the point where one community is mad at another community because they voted differently.
Correct.
I think
And we thought, and plus each level needs to be the same.
Mhm.
If we're gonna go about that and unification of our district in that regard.
Any other questions regarding any of the topics today? Okay, if not, we will plan on having all the information to us by the 9th for our meeting on the 12th. Thank you so much for interrupting your Friday afternoon so that we could talk through some of this, get your feedback on the survey, and everybody have a good weekend.